Richard Halston stepped off his private jet. The city lights of New York City stretched beneath him like a glittering ocean. He had just returned from a 3-month business trip in Europe. Deals had been signed, companies acquired, and his fortune had grown even larger. But none of that mattered as much as seeing his family again. Richard was one of the richest men in America. His companies built skyscrapers, owned hotels, and invested in technology across the world. Yet the person he loved the most was his 10-year-old son, Daniel Halston. Daniel had always waited for him at the mansion gate whenever Richard came home from a trip. But that night, something felt wrong. When Richard's black limousine pulled through the streets toward his mansion, he suddenly asked the driver to stop. Near a small grocery store under a flickering streetlight, a thin boy stood beside a trash bin holding a cardboard sign. "Please, food." The boy's clothes were dirty and torn. His hair looked like it hadn't been brushed in weeks. People passed by him without even looking. Richard frowned. Something about the boy's face seemed familiar. "Stop the car," he said suddenly. The limousine rolled to a halt. Richard stepped out, adjusting his expensive coat, annoyed and confused at the same time. He walked toward the boy. "Where are your parents?" Richard asked firmly. The boy slowly lifted his head. Their eyes met. And in that moment, the world seemed to freeze. Richard's heart stopped. The boy begging on the street was his son. "Deep, Daniel," Richard whispered. The cardboard sign fell from the boy's shaking hands. "Dad?" Richard felt the ground spin beneath him. His son looked thinner. His cheeks were hollow. His eyes were filled with fear and hunger. What happened to you?" Richard asked, his voice trembling. Daniel looked down. "After you left, his mom sent me away." Richard's chest tightened. "Sent you away? Why?" Daniel swallowed. "She said you were never coming back. She said I was a burden and that there was no place for me in the house." Richard's hands began to shake. His wife had told him their son was studying at a private school during his trip. He had trusted her. "Where have you been living?" Richard asked quietly. Daniel pointed toward a dark alley. "Sometimes there, sometimes behind the grocery store. People give me bread sometimes." The billionaire who controlled billion-dollar empires suddenly felt powerless. His son, the heir to his fortune, had been starving on the streets of his own city. For 3 months, Richard fell to his knees and pulled Daniel into his arms. "My God, my son, my son." Tears ran down the face of the man who had never cried in business meetings, never shown weakness to rivals. But this was different. This was his child. "Who else knows about this?" Richard asked slowly. Daniel shook his head.